one confession I have is, I'm really struggling these days thinking about whether or not recruiting people to the military. Because I'm just seeing so many people struggle on the outside, I just see so much stuff just in terms of like, you always assume because somebody goes to the Naval Academy or they're an officer or whatever, right, that they got life figured out, that they got the golden ticket and all this other stuff. But I'm really worried about like the future of work for people transitioning out of the military or just people in general and just having to stay up and compete in this kind of job market and tech and all that other stuff. So, I'm just being honest with that. And, it's interesting because you see so many people talking about like the recruiting problem we have in this country. Yeah. And I'm very patriotic, right? Like I serve my country. I got an inner city boxing gym, right? I'm not overly aggressive with the recruiting kids, but if they ask me, I tell them. But just by natural, I guess a lot of kids just end up going in the military anyway because I inspire them. But I just, I do think about that now, just kind of like, the number of veterans are dwindling and they're looking for current veterans to, kind of help recruit and whatever. But the reality of like what's awaiting a lot of service members as they transition, it does worry me a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about when they transition from the service back to civilian world, right?
Yeah.
How hard is it out there?
I mean, for like, that's a good question.
Tisha just transitioned too, so.
Yeah. It is, the hard part is like when you're in the service, right? Like you don't really have to worry about, you get paid on the 1st and 15th for the most part. You got good medical, you got GI Bill, you got all these different things, right? And when you go to like a place like the Naval Academy, everywhere you go, people like to say, you're the best America has to offer, right? And people really believe that. But then, you got people that are going to college like you, but they might have to work 3 jobs to pay for their schooling, So their grades might suffer a little bit, but let's say they're a killer. They're working like 3-4 jobs. You're going to school full time on the military's dime, and now you're competing against that person in the job market. And that person been hitting the ground running since they were like 22. The minute they graduated, now you're like a service member and you're transitioning. And so, how do we compete? How do we stay competitive? And like you see a lot of programs talking about like veteran hiring and veterans are the best and yada, yada, yada. But on the flip side is like, if you would have told me when I was going to the Naval Academy that like Naval Academy grads would be committing suicide out here and having trouble getting jobs and getting laid off and et cetera, like I just was not exposed to that in my younger days. But now as I'm getting older, I'm starting to see that stuff again. Yeah. And you're just trying to figure out like, okay, like what is the common denominator here? Sorry to hit y'all with this. I know it's a very pro-patriotic podcast, but like, it's just a thing that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of, so basically it's like, hey, we putting people in the military and we giving them like this false and you reworded it, like a false sense of security. And then they coming out of it to the grind of like the grind, bro. The Hunger Games type grind, right. With people that been in this grind for forever. So we might not be outfitted to be in this grind like that. Because I mean, anything we want is kind of at our disposal, right? If we want some financial counseling, that's free. If we want any like everything is free. Money man, like career stuff is free. We could get real estate kind of training for free. Our medical is free, our dental is free, flu shots free. Like everything we get is free. Is flu shot our flu shots free for everybody? Or am I tripping?
No. See, we don't even know. We don't even know.
Yeah, but like everything is free. You have a baby, it's all free. You don't even think about the cost of everything. So then you come out to the real world against people like I see. And it's funny because I was talking to my mom just the other day, and she was telling me about somebody who needed to go get food stamps. She's like, yeah, such and such. Just talking to your mom on the phone. Yeah, such and such need to go get some food stamps. Business. And I said, well, like, what's the prerequisite, to getting food stamps? And she was like, you ain't got enough money for food. You need food. That's the prerequisite. I'm like, that's the only prerequisite.
Let me tell y'all, right? About 3 years ago, I was at a military startup conference, right? It's in Palo Alto Bay Area. You got like all these venture capitalists there, entrepreneurs and stuff, et cetera, right? And I'm there talking to like a bunch of veterans, and I meet this lieutenant colonel in the Air Force who's getting ready to get out, right?
Yeah.
Or he just transitioned or whatever. And I was just joking. I was like, come on in, the water's fine. You can drive Uber, work at Qdoba, whatever. And he looks at me and he goes, I already drive Uber. And I was like, dang. And then I saw, there's another guy in the circle with us. He's like, I drive Uber too. And I was like, just put my foot in my mouth. I was like, But like, people out here driving Teslas, you get picked up. I live in New York City now. I moved to Harlem, but I'm seeing people, driving Teslas, really nice cars, driving Uber, just because the change in the market, right? Like people get let go and all that other stuff. And so I just worry about that because you got to fight every day. Mm-hmm. You got to stay on. And that's not even including the personal life stuff, people going through divorces, right? Dealing with deaths, everything. Bro, the world don't feel sorry for you.
Yeah, right. And it's a big difference between being in the Navy or being in the military in general, because you can keep your job being a mediocre worker. Not in the civilian force. Like you will get cut real quick.
The Uber thing hit me a little bit because between mortgage and so I live in and I hate to be this open about it, but I will for a second. I live close to DC and I work in Annapolis, and my daughter goes to daycare in DC, and that's a personal choice. But between daycare and mortgage, that's like $7,000 a month between daycare and mortgage. Probably a little bit under if that. So that's like $7,000 for me and my wife a month. I'm not getting paid that much more than that a month. You know what I mean? So, and she's not either. So like that's already. And that's just daycare and mortgage. That's not no other bills.
Right.
All these streaming services and like all this stuff, some of the stuff we overindulge in and stuff like that too. But just those two things alone is like $7,000,
Yeah.
So, and I can't imagine somebody being able to do that without what we have. She got a master's degree. She got her job here. I've been in the military for 17 years and some change. So I got that kind of equity there. But yeah, you're right, man.
Yeah, they don't got the TRICARE. They're paying for tuition out of pocket, eating them up, right? So, it's just real.
Yeah, man. And I hate to drag it, but I used to, even when I was younger, man, and I used to look at like family members or friends who seemed like they wasn't progressing, and I'd be a little judgmental, like, man, like you in the same spot, or you keep trying things, ain't shit shaking for you and all that. And my brother told me recently, and it was a rough conversation, but he was like, yo, you pretty much like you living, I don't even want to get into it because it's too dark for me, but it was pretty much I'm living a cushioned life because the government gave me the cushion. Like that's what he said. Yeah. That was his perspective of the life I live. Like I didn't earn this shit. Like, you know what I mean? That was his perspective. He told me that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So that's like, it gives a lot to what you're saying. It kind of unveils that to me a little bit for what some people might be thinking about us out there too.
Yeah, and it's not knocking. I think that sometimes like we get so offended on this stuff, but people have to recognize people are coming from their perspectives, and it's like the person that, is working 12 hours at, Qdoba, you don't think they're working hard, in the main, the Times Square, getting slayed, right? People coming in and out all day. But they just got a little bit of different situation. And the fact of the matter is, like, when you do have those government jobs, you are in the military, you do have a certain level of protection. You don't show up to work on Monday, people come and looking for you, whatever. Yep. Yeah. Civilian world, you don't show up to Monday, it's a wrap.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is the hiring process for vets.
Yeah.
That's a whole mental, like I've been an entrepreneur. I've been self-employed since 2018. I have never applied for a job. The one job I had getting out of the military, working at a private school, St. Benedict's Prep, that was just a handshake. I called up the headmaster, and I had a little clout, I had a little leverage, being African-American Naval Academy grad, moving to Newark, New Jersey. I had ties to the school. So I've always been able to kind of just make it work, right? But I remember that conversation. He's like, yeah, we got to pay you. Like, what are your thoughts? And I was like, oh, at the time, I was like, well, I remember being pretty comfortable as a first lieutenant. I just want to make that. And they were like, what was that? I was like, I think it was like 65, something, right? But like, negotiating those things, the stock, right? Like, and that was a school, so it's not like a tech startup or some of these businesses, but there's just a lot to life that just you're just protected from. And when you transition out, man, I feel for people that are applying for jobs, they're not hearing back, or they have a job and they lose the job and now they got to apply for another job. But that 3-month, that 6-month waiting period, just to find out you didn't get it, and then this stuff extends. And so like that starts eating away people's personal cash flow and all that other stuff. So we can't pretend like that stuff is not out there.
Yeah. I remember my very first job interview after I got out. I only did like 3 interviews, really 2 interviews. And it was so nerve-wracking. I got off like and it was virtual, but after I hung up, I was like, ain't no way I got a job.
Yeah.
ain't no way I got that job. Like it was just so different, everything from like just creating the resume. I went to a resume class while in the Navy, through Fleet and Family. But still like having to go and do an interview. I tried to treat that shit like a say little quarter board. I had no clue what the hell I was doing. I watched a couple YouTube videos trying to, figure out what do I need to do and how I need to answer questions and stuff like that. So it was just a very different world. I realized then like, oh, this is a whole nother world. And the anxiety of, okay, if I don't find a job, like eventually, my military paycheck is going to run out. And thankfully I had retirement, but that ain't your full military paycheck. And then, how long is it going to take? Is it going to be delayed? Is my VA disability going to be delayed? So I just went into like this, like, man, like I was so worried of what life is going to look like on the other side.
Yeah, 100%. And then think about if you're a vet and you transition out and you go back home, a lot of enlisted personnel tend to just go back home, especially the young enlisted. Who are you talking to about this stuff?
Right.
Your homeboys that's already back in town, whatever. You're this big bad dude. They see you on the Instagram. You got the car. You doing your thing. Now you're coming back, staying with your moms. Can't get a job. God forbid you don't use your GI Bill.
Right.
If you don't use your GI Bill, you better be freaking a savant or something. You better be, what's it called? Goodwill Hunting. Get the books out at the library, just motivated. And so, again, this is just kind of my perspective. And I think it ties into kind of what I do now around being an entrepreneur. Because I do think the future of work is like bootstrapped. I do think entrepreneurship is a skill set. Just everyone should learn just how to generate income for themselves and their loved ones at a moment's notice. I had a coaching client today. And, one of the things we were talking about was, a client owed her money, like hadn't paid the invoice. She was asking me like what to do about it. And honestly, I was like, let's just eat it, because it ain't worth your energy. That energy we're dedicating to chasing this down by this person that's not doing right by you in the first place. That's energy we need to focus elsewhere. And I was like, if you put your head down, you can make that up. And so I just think part of, again, entrepreneurship is like the earning the craft. So like if you do have that gap in cash flow, where you're, you got 3 to 6 months, right? Whether it's driving Uber or something. I'm not knocking the Ubers. I'm just putting that out there just to get people perspective, right? Like just being able to go out and like actually make money in a legit, legal way, and I do think that's a good skill set to have.